They told me I'd ruined my life, that no one builds a future out of rust. But when my own family turned their backs, I used what was broken to build something beautiful. This is the story of how a condemned cafe, a handful of tools, and pure faith rebuilt everything I lost, including myself. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like if you believe second chances can shine brighter than gold. Now, let's start. What rust can become. My name's Tiara Hollins, 29 years old, and the day my family cut me off over $1,050, I realized bloodlines could snap cleaner than glass. When I first spotted that shuttered cafe listed on the city's surplus property site, I didn't see peeling paint or busted glass. I saw possibility, a place where I could finally pour my energy into something that was mine. My parents, Randall and Loretta Hollins, didn't share the vision. They wanted me to contribute $2,400 to help my younger brother Kendall join a mindfulness cruise through the Caribbean. When I told them I was investing in a derelict storefront instead, my mother's face hardened. "Then live like rust," she said, her voice trembling with disgust. "You've embarrassed this family enough. If you're hearing this, drop where you're watching from in the comments, because you won't believe where this story ends." I grew up in Baton Harbor, a mid-sized Georgia port town where everyone knows everyone's last name and paycheck. My parents worked hard but never planned ahead. Somehow there was always enough for Kendall's robotics camps and senior trips, but never for my field hockey fees or textbooks. At 16, I bagged groceries before school and cleaned motel rooms afterward. When I graduated high school, the only gift waiting on the table was an encouraging card. "You'll figure it out, T," my father said, patting my shoulder. And I did. Community college by day, diner shifts by night, janitorial work on weekends. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept tuition paid. After 3 years, I finished an associate degree in legal administration, not the law degree I'd once dreamed of, but close enough to open a door. My first job came at Rutherford and Bell Consulting, a small property law office downtown. The pay barely covered rent, but for the first time, my bills balanced. For 6 years, I lived in a 400-square-foot studio with mismatched furniture and a stubborn radiator. No vacations, no takeout, no new shoes unless the old ones tore. While my coworkers posted beach photos, I memorized every line of my spreadsheet. By 30, I'd saved $18,600, a slow, stubborn miracle born from skipped lunches and second-hand coats. That money was my security, my fence against the chaos I grew up with. Meanwhile, my family's finances stayed shaky. My father jumped from warehouse jobs whenever a supervisor talked slick. My mother maxed credit cards chasing holiday perfection. And Kendall, 3 years younger, effortlessly charismatic, coasted from one funded dream to another. Drones, podcasts, startups that fizzled within months. They adored him for his spirit. They tolerated me for my usefulness. My little apartment became my workshop. I lined the walls with mood boards, sticky notes, and home renovation printouts. At night, I watched videos of people transforming condemned spaces into thriving businesses. Cafes, bakeries, galleries, I studied everything from plumbing codes to countertop materials. Owning something tangible felt impossible in Baton Harbor's rising market until a headline caught my eye. City auction, abandoned commercial properties starting at $1,050. The photos were awful. Rusted signage, boarded windows, weeds swallowing the entryway, but I couldn't look away. A one-story brick corner cafe, built in the 1940s, sat 3 blocks from the river. I imagined sunlight streaming through those grimy windows, the smell of espresso instead of mildew. I started attending auctions just to learn the rhythm. The quick gestures, the coded nods, the casual way investors spent sums that could buy my entire life. I learned zoning categories, rehab grants, permit timelines. Then I saw it, Lot 12B, the old Maple Cafe, opening bid $1,050. My hands shook as I circled the date on my wall calendar. The day I visited the site, reality hit hard. The porch leaned like it had given up hope. Inside, rainwater pooled on the floor. Ceiling tiles sagged, and a family of possums had turned the kitchen into a nest. "You really thinking of buying this?" asked Dion Matthews, a building inspector who owed me a favor from the office. He surveyed the ruins, shaking his head. Roof's shot, plumbing's prehistoric, wiring's a nightmare. Might even have black mold hiding behind that paneling. I wrote each flaw in my notebook. What about the foundation? He crouched, ran a hand along the cracked concrete. Still solid. Guess the bones want to live. That was all I needed to hear. I called Monroe Jacobs, a contractor friend, to take a second look. He laughed when he saw the place, but stayed anyway. Girl, this'll chew you up and spit you out, he said, kicking a rotted floorboard. Then, quieter. But if you see what I think you see, it could work. By sunset, I had 10 pages of notes and a rough estimate. $14,000 in critical repairs just to make it passable. Nearly all my savings, but maybe, finally, my way out. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the image of the cafe's faded sign against the golden sky. For once, I wasn't scared of the risk. I was terrified of staying small forever. My mother called that Friday with her usual command masked as an invitation. Family dinner. Sunday. 6 sharp. No excuses, she said before hanging up. I should have known better, but part of me still craved their approval. When I arrived, my father was sunk into the couch watching football, and the air smelled of fried catfish and lemon cleaner. Kendall breezed in 20 minutes late, wearing linen pants and a smile that could melt concrete. I just got word, he announced as he dropped into a chair. The Meditative Horizons Caribbean Voyage accepted me. Only 30 applicants worldwide get in. Mom clasped her hands like he'd been nominated for sainthood. That's wonderful, baby. You deserve it. She heaped an extra spoon of rice on his plate. Kendall leaned forward, lowering his voice just enough to sound serious. The fee's $2,400, not counting airfare. It'll change everything for me. I almost choked on my tea. $2,400? For 10 days floating around doing yoga? Dad cleared his throat. It's an investment in his peace of mind. Mom turned to me. Your father and I can contribute $1,300. We were hoping you'd match it, since family looks out for family. I set my fork down. You're asking me for $1,100 to fund Kendall's cruise? Kendall gave a sheepish smile. It's not just a cruise, T. It's a healing experience. Then heal locally, I said, trying to keep my tone steady. Because I'm putting my money into something that'll actually build a future. My mother's eyebrows shot up. What could possibly be more important than your brother's breakthrough? I took a breath. There's a city auction next week. I'm buying a small cafe building downtown. The room froze. Then my father barked out a short laugh. With what money? The opening bid's $1,050, I explained. It's in bad shape, but I've done my research. The location's good, and I can do most of the work myself. You? Renovate a building. Mom's voice dripped with disbelief. You can't even change a car tire. Kendall snickered. Come on, T. You think you're about to become Joanna Gaines overnight. My jaw tightened. No. But I've spent years learning construction basics at work. I've helped file the permits that get places like this reopened. Mom slammed her fork against her plate, sauce splattering. So, instead of helping your brother grow spiritually, you'll pour your life savings into some condemned coffee shack that'll probably collapse? It's not condemned, I said. Just neglected. And I'm tired of renting. This is a step toward stability. Stability. She laughed, a harsh, sharp sound. You've always been practical to the point of boring. Kendall dares to dream, and you punish him for it. I'm not punishing anyone, I whispered. I just want a home, something mine. Dinner unraveled from there. Dad muttered about me being ungrateful. Mom lectured me on family duty. Kendall rolled his eyes and called me Miss Spreadsheet. I left before dessert, clutching my keys like armor. Driving home, I tried to talk myself out of it. I could write a check, keep the peace, keep pretending we were all the same. But lying in my tiny apartment later that night, I realized peace built on compliance isn't peace at all. For once in my life, I'd choose me. The morning of the auction, I woke before dawn, nerves thrumming under my skin. I wore a thrift store blazer and flats polished within an inch of their life. Confidence wasn't something I felt. It was something I decided to imitate until it stuck. The Baden Harbor County Administration building buzzed with quiet intensity. About 40 bidders filled the room. Developers in tailored suits, retirees in polo shirts, and a few lone dreamers like me clutching manila folders. When they handed me my bidder's paddle, number 56, I rubbed my thumb over the printed digits like they were lucky. The auctioneer, a fast-talking man in suspenders, opened the session at exactly 9. Properties flickered across the screen. Apartment lots, parking structures, a row of old duplexes. Numbers flew. 30,000, 60, 110. Then came lot 12B, for 14, Maple Street, former Maple Cafe. Opening bid 1050. Do I have 1050? I raised my paddle before I could think. Bidder 56 with 1050. Do I hear 1200? Silence. The auctioneer scanned the room, eyebrows raised. Going once. My heart pounded in my ears. Anyone could jump in now and snatch it away. Going twice. Still nothing. Sold. To bidder 56 for $1,050. The gavel hit Wood with a clean, final crack. I'd just bought a building for less than the cost of a used laptop. The paperwork afterward felt surreal. I signed document after document while a clerk explained code deadlines and tax transfer details. She handed me a thick packet labeled Transfer of Ownership for 14 Maple Street. You've got 30 days to fix your major safety issues before reinspection, she said. I nodded, dazed. Walking out of that fluorescent hallway into sunlight, the papers clutched to my chest. I felt the first real surge of triumph I'd ever earned. I owned something. It might be falling apart, but so was I, and maybe we could rebuild together. That Sunday, I made the mistake of bringing the news home. You did what? Mom shrieked when I told her. I bought the Maple Cafe. Dad's fork clattered. You wasted your entire savings on a condemned dump instead of helping your brother? Mom, Dad, it's my money. I've planned this for months. Kendall folded his arms, eyes glassy with fake tears. You really chose some crusty old building over your own family. This isn't about choosing sides, I said. It's about building a life that's mine. My mother pushed back from the table, her face tightening. Then go live in your rustic cafe. See how long your independence lasts when the roof caves in. Loretta, my father started, but she cut him off. No, Randall. She's made her choice. She's chosen garbage over kin. She turned to me, eyes bright with fury. Then live like rust, Tiara. You've shamed this family for the last time. I waited for my father to defend me, but he just stared at his plate. I stood slowly, gathering my bag. I guess I'll find out what rust can become. And I walked out, dignity trembling but intact. That night, I parked my car in front of my new cafe and stared at the dark silhouette against the moonlight. The world had called it worthless. So had my family. Now it was mine. And I was going to prove them all wrong. I slept in my car that first night, tucked under a streetlight outside the old cafe. The metal frame groaned with every passing truck, and the steering wheel left a deep imprint on my cheek when I woke. Morning light exposed everything the night had hidden, cracked glass, splintered doors, and vines clawing up the brick. The paint had peeled so long it looked like the walls were shedding their own past. For a moment, I felt foolish. I had no plan beyond stubbornness, no roof that didn't leak, and no family to call. But I had keys. Keys meant possibility. At a corner diner a few blocks away, I nursed a cup of burnt coffee and opened my laptop. By the time I finished 2 refills, I'd built a spreadsheet titled Operation Rust Revival. Priority 1, make one room safe enough to sleep in within 2 weeks. Priority 2, seal the roof before the next rain. I used $380 from my savings to buy heavy-duty trash bags, gloves, bleach, a respirator mask, and a used shop vac from a pawn shop. When I walked back into the cafe that afternoon, the stale air hit me like a wall. But the silence was mine now, not a stranger's. I started clearing trash. Old chairs with busted legs, warped flooring, stacks of waterlogged newspapers. For 3 days, I filled bag after bag until I could see the cracked tile beneath the grime. Each load dragged to the dumpster felt like proof I hadn't made a mistake. On the 4th day, I discovered the first major problem. What I thought was just a stained ceiling tile turned out to be a collapsed section of roof. When I poked it with a broom handle, half the panel caved in and sent dust raining over me. I froze, staring through the gap at a sliver of blue sky. That's when I called Monroe, my contractor friend. He listened quietly, then said, "Take a deep breath, T. Roofs can eat a whole budget, but I'll come by this weekend. We'll patch it enough to buy you time." True to his word, he showed up early Saturday morning with tarps and a truck bed full of tools. We worked side by side for hours, him teaching, me learning, how to brace rotted beams, how to check water flow, how to tell when something was beyond saving. By sundown, we'd secured the roof with thick black tarp and temporary planks. It wasn't pretty, but it would keep out the rain. "Your parents still mad?" Monroe asked as he packed up his drill. "They said I chose garbage over family," I said. He grinned. "Then make garbage shine, sis." That week, I focused on the back office, the smallest, driest room in the building. I scrubbed mold off the walls with bleach until my arms trembled. I sealed the windows with plastic wrap and duct tape. I laid an air mattress on the floor and dragged in a space heater connected to the one outlet that still worked. That night, as I lay listening to the creaks above me, I whispered to the dark, "This is home for now." When I showed up at work the next Monday, my boss, Mr. Rutherford, raised an eyebrow. "You look like you've gone 10 rounds with a drywall hammer," he said. I hesitated before telling him what I was doing. His expression softened. "My wife did the same thing once," he said. "Took an old flower shop and turned it into a bakery. Tell you what, take Fridays off for the next month. Paid. Call it a small business incubator experiment. Just handle the Carter files when you're back." I nearly cried right there between the filing cabinets. With Fridays free, my schedule became a cycle. Friday through Sunday, clean up, repair, collapse into sleep. Monday through Thursday, work at the law office, deliver food at night. The exhaustion was bone deep, but every task chipped away at fear. Then came another setback. The plumbing line beneath the sink burst when I tried to test it, flooding the floor with brown water. The smell nearly knocked me out. I called Monroe again, but this time he couldn't help. He was out of town. So I watched 3 hours of online tutorials, rented a wrench kit, and did it myself. It wasn't perfect, but when water finally ran clear through a patched pipe, I screamed with joy loud enough to startle a cat outside. The neighbors noticed. At first, they watched from their porches as I dragged out debris. Then Miss Geneva, who ran the soul food spot across the street, brought me cornbread and advice. "Don't throw away everything," she said. "These old counters are real oak. Sand them down. They'll shine again." Next, Mr. Claxton, the retired electrician 2 doors down, stopped by. "Your wiring's older than both of us," he chuckled, handing me a spool of wire. "Let me show you how to fix this before you light the place up by accident." And then there was Toya, a teen from the neighborhood who'd walk by after school and ask questions about tools. I paid her $20 to help paint, trim, and sweep. She called me Miss T and told everyone she worked at the Comeback Cafe. By the end of 6 weeks, I'd turned the back office into something resembling a studio apartment. A cot, a mini fridge, working outlets, and one stubborn space heater. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Some nights I still cried. Usually when the fatigue hit so hard I could barely lift a hammer, but each tear felt less like defeat and more like release. When rain came again in early spring, I waited for leaks that never appeared. The tarp held. The roof held. And so did I. By the time spring stretched over Baden Harbor, the cafe no one wanted had become my entire life. The tarp still fluttered in places, but the interior had started to glow with possibility. I'd scraped the walls clean, refinished the front counter, and polished the old oak until it gleamed like honey under sunlight. I worked every Friday through Sunday, from dawn until I couldn't keep my eyes open. My hands were covered in tiny scars from splinters and cuts, but I wore them like proof. The city inspector stopped by mid-April for my first recheck. He tapped a clipboard, surveyed the roof patch, and finally said, "You've got grit, Miss Hollins." Most folks would have bulldozed this by now. That was the first time anyone from City Hall had said my name without pity. The neighborhood started changing with me. The boarded-up storefront across the street became a flower shop. A mural bloomed along the block wall, a phoenix rising from rust and smoke. I decided to name my place the Rust House Cafe. It felt right, a reminder that even corroded things can shine again. Every paycheck for my day job went straight into repairs, electrical rewiring, plumbing replacement, flooring. I sold old furniture online, took on freelance paralegal work after hours, even delivered groceries at night. By June, I had running water, steady power, and a small bathroom that didn't leak. The building no longer smelled like mold. It smelled like paint, sawdust, and fresh hope. One morning, a woman with a press badge appeared at my door. "I'm Camille Harper, Baton Harbor Gazette," she said, smiling. City inspector mentioned a young woman turning a condemned cafe into something special. "Can I write about it?" I hesitated, embarrassed by the mess of paint cans and extension cords. But she was kind, and something about her curiosity felt genuine. A week later, the article appeared online. From Rust to Revival: How One Woman is Restoring a Forgotten Cafe and a Neighborhood. The story spread faster than I expected. People stopped me on the street to say they'd read it. Small business owners offered discounts on materials. A local community college invited me to speak to their entrepreneurship class. I even started a social media page to share progress updates. The following grew quietly, just a few hundred people, but their comments filled the quiet nights when the work felt endless. "You're inspiring, Miss T. Keep going, sis. We're rooting for you. This right here is Black excellence in motion." Each message lit something inside me I hadn't realized was hungry for warmth. Then one humid evening in July, a car I recognized pulled into my gravel driveway. Kendall stepped out, wearing designer sneakers and a guilty smile. "I heard about your cafe," he said, scratching his neck. "That article's everywhere. Looks amazing." I crossed my arms. "Did Mom send you?" He hesitated. "Sort of. She doesn't know I'm here yet, though." We stood in silence, the cicadas screaming between us. "Bali didn't work out?" I asked, remembering the cruise that started it all. He sighed. "Didn't even make it to Bali. The company folded before departure. I tried freelancing for a bit, but nothing stuck." I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. "Come see," I said finally, pushing the door open. His eyes widened as he stepped inside. The floors gleamed. The walls were painted sage green with cream trim. The old counter I'd restored stood like an altar. "This doesn't even look like the same place," he whispered. "Mom told everybody you were living in squalor." I laughed softly. For a while that was true, but I learned how to fix things the hard way. He nodded, running a hand along the counter. "You really did this by yourself?" "Not entirely. Neighbors helped. Friends showed up. The city gave me hell, but I pushed back." For the first time in years, Kendall looked at me without judgment, just awe. "I came to say sorry," he said quietly. "You were right to choose yourself. I didn't see it then." I exhaled, something loosening in my chest. Apology accepted. Before he left, he lingered by the door. "You know Mom's struggling, right? Dad's hours got cut. They had to help me out after my last gig flopped." I swallowed hard. "I'm sorry to hear that. She still talks about you," he added. "Half the time it's bragging. The other half it's guilt." 3 days later, that guilt showed up in person. My mother arrived unannounced, wearing her Sunday best and carrying a pecan pie that looked suspiciously store-bought. "Well," she said, scanning the space, "this is charming." Her tone made it sound like a surprise inspection. I offered her tea and watched her take in every corner, like she was searching for proof I'd failed. She finally sat, hands folded. "Your brother told me you're turning this into a real cafe, and that you've had offers to sell." I nodded cautiously. "Two so far." Her lips pursed. "If you sold now, you'd make a fine profit. Enough to help your father and me catch up on our bills. The words hit like cold water. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You threw me out for buying this place, and now you want me to sell it to fix your money problems? Her eyes flashed. Families forgive, Tiara. We stick together. Where was that loyalty when I was sleeping in my car? She looked away, guilt flickering across her face. I didn't know. Yes, you did. You just didn't care until it became convenient. She stood abruptly. You've always been stubborn. Still are. I had to be, I said. It's the only reason I made it this far. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked her to the door. For what it's worth, I added as she stepped outside, I forgive you. But forgiveness isn't a free key to walk back in whenever you please. She blinked, surprised, then left without another word. That night, I sat on the porch with a mug of tea, the street lamps flickering in the humid air. I thought about what she said, about forgiveness, about family. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A message from my father. Proud of you, T. Can I stop by this weekend? For the first time in a year, I texted back. Yes. My father showed up that Saturday afternoon with a toolbox in hand and a sheepish grin. I figured you could use another pair of hands, he said. I almost didn't recognize him without his usual weariness. His work shirt was clean, sleeves rolled to the elbow, a quiet humility replacing the pride that once filled our house. Inside, he stopped short, eyes sweeping the space. Lord, T, this place looks alive. He ran his hand over the counter, traced the trim along the windows. You did all this yourself? Mostly, I said, smiling. Neighbors helped. A lot of late nights. He nodded slowly. You built something real here. Your mama never told me half of it. We spent the afternoon fixing a stubborn bathroom faucet together, the kind of ordinary task that somehow felt sacred. When we finished, he leaned against the wall and sighed. I owe you an apology, he said finally. I should have stood up for you that night. I knew you were doing something smart. I just didn't want the fight. Hearing it out loud undid something in me I hadn't realized was still knotted. Thank you, I said quietly. He gave a small nod. Your mama's proud too, even if she don't know how to say it. I know, I said. I'm still learning how to deal with her on my terms. He smiled. That's fair. Before he left, I asked, there's another property coming up for auction next month similar to this one right next door. What if we bought it together? Fixed it up and sold it. He straightened. You mean as partners? 50-50, I said. We could call it Rust and Renewal Projects. He laughed, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from him since I was a kid. You got yourself a deal. 2 weeks later, Kendall showed up again, full of new plans. Dad told me about your renovation business, he said, holding out a flyer mock-up he designed. You need branding. Social media. I could handle that. I eyed him skeptically. You sure you want to do real work this time? He held my gaze. I do. I'm tired of chasing things that disappear. I want to build something that lasts. For the first time, I believed him. We agreed to let him manage the online presence while Dad and I handled the construction. It wasn't perfect teamwork, but it was progress, real, grounded, grown folk progress. By autumn, the Rust House Cafe had transformed completely. The brick facade gleamed under a new sign hand-painted by a local artist, Rust House Cafe, from worn to warm. Inside, the walls carried framed photos of the renovation journey, a timeline of sweat and small victories. I opened the cafe quietly. No grand ribbon cutting, just the smell of roasted beans, jazz on the speakers, and light pouring through the windows. The first customers were neighbors who'd lent me tools or advice. Then city employees, then college students with laptops. Within weeks, it became a morning stop for half the block. One afternoon, I looked up from the counter and froze. My mother stood in the doorway, a hesitant smile tugging at her mouth. I heard the peach cobbler coffee is yours, she said. I poured her a cup, heart pounding. On the house. She took a sip, eyes softening. It's good. Real good. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't need to. The silence between us, for once, wasn't heavy. It was healing. A month later, we held a small block party to celebrate the cafe's official opening and the start of construction on the property next door. String lights crisscrossed the street, and music spilled from open windows. My father grilled chicken on a borrowed smoker. Kendall managed the event's live stream, proudly wearing a Rust and Renewal t-shirt. And my mother floated between guests, bragging to anyone who'd listen about her daughter, the businesswoman. I let her have that. Some victories aren't worth arguing over. As the sun dipped low, neighbors filled the patio, laughing and eating under the glow of the cafe sign. Miss Geneva raised her glass. To the woman who turned rust into gold. Everyone cheered. I laughed, embarrassed but grateful. Later that night, after the music faded and everyone drifted home, I sat alone on the front steps of the cafe. The air was thick with the scent of barbecue and honeysuckle. A year ago, I'd slept in my car on this same street, unwanted, unproven, and heartbroken. Now the building behind me hummed with life and light. My savings account wasn't huge, but I owned 2 properties, had a steady business, and most surprisingly, had found peace with the people who once cast me out. I looked at my hands, still marked by faint scars and calluses, and smiled. They weren't signs of struggle anymore. They were signatures of growth. My father joined me on the steps, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "Remember when your mama said to live like Rust?" he asked with a grin. I laughed softly. Yeah, guess she was half right. He raised his mug. "Here's to Rust, proof that even the worn-out stuff can shine again." We clinked our cups, watching fireflies float across the dark. And for the first time in my life, I felt entirely, completely home. When I first held those rusted keys in my hand, everyone thought I was out of my mind. They saw a broken cafe, I saw a beginning. And maybe that's the real lesson. You don't need everyone to understand your vision. You just need the courage to keep building when they walk away. A year ago, I was sleeping in my car outside this building. Now, I unlock the same door each morning and breathe in the smell of roasted beans, paint, and peace. This cafe isn't just a business. It's proof that even what's been written off as ruined can still rise again. I didn't just rebuild a building. I rebuilt myself. And I learned that sometimes the rust isn't a flaw. It's the story of how you survived. If you've ever been told your dream was too small, too risky, too impossible, remember my story. Don't wait for permission to start. Don't stop when the noise gets loud. And never apologize for choosing yourself. Because when they said, "Live like Rust," I did, and turned it into gold. Tell me in the comments, what's one thing you've been afraid to start, and what's stopping you? If Tiara's story moved you, tap like so more people can see it. Subscribe to follow the next transformation in Revenge Tales by Camera. And remember, sometimes the very thing people call junk is just waiting for the right hands to make it shine again.